Hi, everybody. Like you said, I'm Dan Stalp, and I run a Sandler office in the Kansas City area. And just to give you a little bit on the books, in case you're interested, it's about, the books are all anchored by high school class reunions. So the first book, they're between the ages of 38 and 48. The second book, they're between 58 and 68. And the last book, they're 78, but their adult children rise up in that book. It's fictional, and it's about just career significance and taking chances and leaving a legacy. So I'll leave it at that. If you want to learn more, you can just go out to thereunionbooks.com. All right, but today we're here to talk about equal business posture or business posture. And I really would like this to be interactive. That's kind of most comfortable for me, and hopefully it's more comfortable for you. But when you think about selling or working within an organization where you have people that you work for, when you have clients and prospects, why would having equal business posture be a good thing in terms of influencing someone? Anybody want to throw out some ideas? Why would having equal business posture be helpful when you're attempting to influence somebody? If you think it through. Well, let me ask you this. How about, you guys know how to use the reaction buttons down at the bottom? Like right now, I'm doing a little thumbs up. How many of you are in a sales role or you have some type of quota? I'm just trying to get an idea who's here. Sales quota, okay. How many of you are the owner of your company? Maybe put a thumbs up there. You actually own the company. Okay, so I might ask the owners, if someone's calling on you and they have equal business posture, how does that make you feel in terms of, I call it the C's: confidence, competence, consistency. Anything come to mind when somebody you see as more of an equal versus someone who might be subservient in that role? Anybody have any thoughts on that? I think, Sean, were you a business owner? I don't know if you can unmute. But the net.
Yeah, sorry, I was just changing devices.
Right. You're good.
Dan, I guess it depends on the size of the company. Please go ahead, Wayne.
No, go ahead. I didn't know if you saw my hand, but that's okay. Please, no worries.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so I guess it just depends on my thoughts on that. It really depends on, I guess, the size of the organization and the target, customer, right? That really plays a big influence. Like, we're a small company. If we're, targeting a larger enterprise, like, we're not going to expect to interact with the C level necessarily out of the gate. So.
That's right. That's a good point. And Wayne, what were you going to say?
I think my initial comment was, with anything, when you have something that is going to leverage the playing field where there's some degree of equality, especially in this side, it can help to foster being comfortable. It can help foster engagement, or helping with regards to moving or driving business, because you're feeling that there's no barrier, that you're feeling that the levels, the playing field is leveled.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I look at it as a partnership. If you can be partners with that person, you've got a good long-term relationship with them. And it goes both ways. I want to be sold to by someone who I feel I can respect, and they can be my partner and in business with them for a long time.
Love it. So that's what we're going to get into, is not being perceived as maybe a vendor, where it's just price, or as a lesser. Some people take this a lot farther than others, but I don't necessarily agree with this, but some people say, if they're not as successful or more successful than me, then I don't, want to talk to them, which I think is really arrogant, but that's a whole other thing. But some people think that way. They're looking for someone who they at least perceive to be an equal. The reality of it is we're not always equals, but what I'm going to do today is give you some ways to establish that without necessarily being as old or as rich or with as much knowledge or whatever it takes for them to feel like they're equal. So let me jump in here. I just want to get a little bit of buy-in before I did that. So today's topic is, establishing equal business posture. And we already did this, who I am, and hopefully I haven't changed too much in 2 or 3 years. All right, so just some goals for today. One is just to define what that means. I think most of us get that, but not only for your own business, and that could be internally, externally, but especially for your salespeople. And then what are those hacks? What are the things that we can do if we don't necessarily have, like I say, you don't get to pick your parents. Well, you don't always get, sometimes you just are where you are based on your age, but there's some things that we can do to establish that quickly. And I didn't know if anybody else came on today that just had a goal of some sort. You know, what brought you on that maybe isn't one of these two? Anybody have anything in addition to this? I'll take that as a no. We'll just keep going. So one thing in terms of sales to establish an equal business posture is, you know, if you think about it, like someone mentioned those larger companies, they tend to have what I would call a buying process. They might have a purchasing or procurement. They might have committees, subcommittees, executive committees, might have a board. They might, you know, or it may just be, you know, two business partners that, you know, hash things out. But if you're selling, and for those of you that have salespeople or are selling, if you don't have a system or a process for selling, you are not in equal business stature for someone who does, because you'll hear things like, well, that's not the way we do it around here. Well, this is our process. And if you don't have a process, you're already at a disadvantage. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And sometimes you can say the same thing, you know, well, hey, can I share with you what our process is for you to learn more about what we do? So using words like process helps with that. Now, it's best not to just use the word, but to have a process. But what processes do is it helps us get things done. It leads to decisions, and there's specific order or actions. And so if I don't really have a specific order or actions and the person buying from me does, you could see where I'm going to be kind of down here, they're going to be up here. We're going to end up following all of their processes because I don't have any. So this is just real big level, but having a process for how you do things establishes equal business posture. Now, they don't always agree, but at least we know what agrees and what doesn't agree, and then we negotiate on the things that don't agree, as opposed to feeling like I have to negotiate everything because I don't have a process. So that's kind of the big umbrella under all this. Any questions about that? I'm just curious if any of you, if, you know, could you, like, literally, like when you onboard someone, is there like a step-to-step process of how, you know, we contact people through closure where they actually buy from us? Or does the process really more begin after they buy from us? Any thoughts on that? Like, how many of you would say, yeah, there's a process, not just after they buy, you know, because operations is really good at that, right? But we also have a process before people buy. If that's something that you feel like you have, just maybe.
Yeah, I feel like I have that. I mean, we have a process. We have what we call a discovery call sales process, yes, where, you know, we focus on a target market, you know, who we would like to speak to, what value we add, opening questions to kind of get, you know, once we get them on the phone, opening questions to kind of get them to the meeting, and then from the meeting, the discovery call. So yeah, there's processes.
Good. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You might even have templates for things, you know, this have a consistency, not just, you know, we have 5 salespeople and we all do something a little differently, you know, and again, that doesn't mean you can't be yourself and, you know, just what makes you special, but having that process allows consistency. Back to some of the C's we've been using: competence, consistency, confidence, comfortable was a word somebody used earlier. Those all provide for that because they feel like there's something that we're following.
Yeah, and something I really love about having a process that's consistent is it gives you the chance to look back and make changes that improve upon that system or that process. So if you're all doing something similar, you have something that you can look back on, discuss, and then make some iterations to improve the process. And I know something selfishly here at NerdWise we do, whether it's sales, the marketing, or fulfillment, we're always looking for ways to improve upon that process. And I didn't want to make them feel like they weren't being listened to. Wayne, did you have your hand up for any reason?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My hand should be down. I had my hand up.
That's all right. Didn't know if you wanted to jump in.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, it gives you kind of that structure. You know, you still, each individual gets to be themselves and what's unique about them, but there's that consistent structure of how we do things around here. And it also helps you attract a different type of salesperson. You know, someone who likes to wing it won't necessarily be attracted to that. And you may say, that's good, because I don't like it when salespeople wing it. You know, so sometimes we're the reason that they're winning is because we don't have a process. But let's get into some more. That's a bigger rock to push up the hill, but I just want to start there. But let's start with maybe some other more specific or tangible things. Just a second here. So, a lot of people are, you know, subconsciously, maybe they do this, but they don't consciously do it. But As you can see here, this is a man and a woman, but they have very equal postures in this situation. And a lot of times when, we've kind of gotten away from the in-person meetings, we don't have as many of them, although they're definitely starting to come back. But even on a Zoom call, you can kind of pick up on posture. And so one way would be is to match the person you're attempting to influence. And that's the key word there, match the person you're attempting to influence. Now, sometimes in a situation, you're both trying to influence one another. A lot of times when I talk to salespeople, I go, well, there's two sales going on. They go, well, what? I'm the salesperson. I know, but sometimes they're trying to sell you on something as well, like why they qualify, or sell themselves that they're maybe bigger than they really are, or sell themselves that they're going to be bigger than they really are. There's all kinds of influencing that's going on, but the people that I tend to work with most are the salespeople. But this could be a spouse, a child, whatever. And if we match them, the goal here is that they feel like you get them. A lot of people in C-level positions and owners of companies sometimes feel kind of isolated. They don't feel like most people are like them. And so if they get around someone that they perceive gets them, they're more likely to share more information. Part of the reason why they're isolated is because they don't share a lot. Well, if they start to share, they can start to work on some of these things that they're just keeping to themselves because they just don't feel like people get it. So it can be the speaking, the sitting, the facial, that whole type of thing. And then the other things one of you mentioned earlier, I can't remember who, was that sometimes you don't get to work with that C-level person in an enterprise account. Like they may bring in somebody that's not necessarily your equal. But for that person, if you can bring the power of those people into the room, and even when they're not necessarily able to be there yet, you could say like, well, before I bring our C-level people in, or before I bring my president in, here's what they're going to ask me. Before that happens, they're going to say, well, what are they doing about this? Or how are they going to get this done? They'll want to know that before they actually come to the meeting. So you see how, even though I'm in that scenario, I'm not the president, I'm not the C-level, I'm saying, I need to go back and share with them, why we need to get together, but I know this is what they're going to want to know. So that's equal business posture. Even if I'm not that C-level person and I'm talking to a C-level, I can still bring that power of the C-level into the equation, and it's more equal. If they want to meet the president, I have to have some answers before that happens. So that would be probably more empowering for the salesperson. I'm going to stop for a second because that one's I might get some, when dogs don't understand what you're talking about, they kind of go like this. So I don't know, has anybody ever just inadvertently said that before? Like, you've got someone you work with and you just go, yeah, I can go back and tell them all day long that they should go on this meeting, but if I don't have this information, I'm not going to do it. And you just say it, and then people go, oh, well then, yeah, this is what it is. Anybody ever used that before? The power of someone that maybe is even higher up than you? Or let's face it, talk about your parents. What my dad used to always say? Everybody's like, what? My dad's 93 years old. I'm almost a grandpa, but they still want to know what my dad said. It's just kind of interesting, but just bringing in like the power of other people that they perceive to be wise or influential. Anybody accidentally do that? No? Okay, it's just something to think about. If you're feeling like, they're up here and, for whatever reason you're here, you can bring the power of a like person from your company into the conversation. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, now this is kind of getting a little, I always call the psychological stuff woo-woo, but this is a little woo-woo. Okay. And so one of the things when you're attempting to influence someone, because now influencing someone doesn't mean I get to talk the whole time, right? Influencing means they talk. But if they don't feel safe with me or you, they don't talk as much. So one of the things that is really key in influencing is being in what we call your nurturing parent ego state. And just to get you kind of started on, what nurturing parents say, one thing they'll say, even though they're in control and they're still the parent, and there's some type of a negotiating going on, like cleaning your room or whatever, is if they don't agree with you, a critical parent would just say, no, get in there, clean that room, or you're not going out tonight. It's that simple, right? And you can see I can do that very easily. But a nurturing parent would say, you know what, let's do this. I know you're really tight on, schedule right now, but you also want to go out tonight. So, how about you at least get everything picked up off your, see here, I'm still in, let's do this. How about nurturing parent? How about you get at least all the things picked up, and at least into the washing machine. And then, and then tomorrow, if you'd like, then you can finish the rest of it. How about we do that? So I'm still negotiating with them, but I'm trying to let them kind of come around a little bit instead of me just dictating or them saying, I'll do it. And then they don't do it and they still go out and then we got trouble the next day. So using terms like we, us, together, even when sometimes clients and prospects are misbehaving. And you might say, I can see how that happened, based on the confusion, I can see how that happened. But what can we do next time to avoid that? See, I'm definitely being assertive here. I'm not just going to lay down and say, do whatever you want. The kids are home alone. And I'm talking about prospects, clients, coworkers, those types of people. Because let's face it, we're all children trapped in adults' bodies. I mean, we all show some type of childish behavior every day. There's something we do that's either rebellious or kind of sneaky or whatever. And so we want to just avoid that with people we're interacting with. So using this type of terminology, or they might say, well, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that. I wasn't supposed to do that. Tell you what, let's hop on a Zoom call. We'll go over it together. And then we'll make sure that everything's clear. Would that be all right? Say, let's do this. Or how about we do this? We'll do it together. We, us. And that's how you're still maintaining control, but not being critical towards them. Anybody on here, it might have just been something your parents did and said, but you find yourself maybe in some ways by accident saying some of those things to help influence. Anybody have a story when you're attempting to keep people doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Well, I won't get too specific, but I will say personally in my marriage and my relationship and with our entire customer success team here at NerdWise, people like to feel respected, like they have that even business posture and that there's a two-way road. And that's really important. When it's a dictatorship and there's a finger pointing out and there's really three pointing back at you, it becomes almost like a tyrannical type of situation. And most people will rebel against that over time. So as long as they know that there's an understanding, there's a suggestion there that we can work on together, and there's a two-way roadmap there on the street, then you tend to be able to take big steps forward together. But if it's a one-way street and it's my way or the highway, it can be very challenging to motivate your partners and your teammates. I can tell you that. Yeah.
And sometimes clients can be that critical parent. Mm-hmm. They might say something like, well, if you can't do this for you, I guess we're just going to have to leave, ultimatums and those types of things. So, but you can still come back to them in that nurturing parent ego state that, we don't have to go quite that far, but let's do this. Can we at least talk about this and this, and then you share this, and then we'll come up with some type of something that we can both live with. Even though they were threatening me, I didn't have to, say, well, okay, let's just end it, or I do something I don't want to do because they're threatening me. They're threatening to leave. So this allows us to stay in that parent, but still nurturing for the best of both of us. No one has to lose here. Any other thoughts quickly? Okay, so that's another way to establish equal business posture. Now, this is a term that's unique to Sandler. We call them upfront contracts, and they're not like, press real hard, the third copy's yours. These are all verbal agreements. We talk about things up front so there aren't surprises later. And just to give you an example, this, of some things that you may want to have upfront contracts with. And then another hack is to say, something along, this is doing an upfront contract right now. I might say, hey, Wayne, can I share a best practice with you? Before we get going, can I share a best practice with you? He'd say, sure. Well, a lot of times our competitors start with the proposal. And what we found is, let's just talk about what you want, what you don't want, and then we'll do the proposal. What are your thoughts about that? You see how, I'm already establishing that we're different. but I didn't say, yeah, no way are you getting a proposal right now. We don't do it that way. See, that's being hard to work with. Just saying, can I share a best practice with you? And I to this day, I've never heard anybody say, no, we don't want to hear any best practices. We're out on that. No best practices around here. They always want to hear a best practice. Or another one might be, I know that, you're supposed to gather this information and then you're going to take it to the stakeholders and then they're going to talk about it, and then they're going to come back and I'm going to have questions that you're not going to know. And then you're going to come back to me and I'm going to answer those questions. And then, but can I share a best practice with you? What's that? What if we got the stakeholders involved a little sooner and we talk things out instead of all this back and forth? See how I'm introducing, and it is a best practice. Or, I know you want all this right now, you want everything up front, but sometimes I've found if we can slow things down, can I share a best practice? And we can just slow things down a little bit in the beginning and really get the information we need, then it can speed things up later. Because we've all had hurry up and wait, right? Oh my gosh, we needed this yesterday. And then you give it to them and they sit on it for 2 months. They obviously didn't need it yesterday. Or, another one might be, I didn't mean to do that. Is that, I know that, you see us as a vendor and someone who's going to help you out on this, but can I share a best practice with you? While we are a vendor, what I'd like to do, in addition to you qualifying us, we'd like to qualify your situation too, to make sure that we're the best fit for you. We may not be. See, that's a level playing field. Or I don't just send proposals over email. Well, can't you just email it to me? I can, but can I share a best practice with you? What's that? What if we set up 10 minutes or 15 minutes and we get on a Zoom call and we go over it together? I can answer all your questions right then and there, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second. There's a lot there. Anything in there that resonated with anybody that you think would, just because I call it a best practice doesn't mean it's a best practice for everybody, but people normally just kind of sit up like, oh, what's that? I don't want to miss out. But was there anything in there that was intriguing to somebody in terms of a best practice? How about, I'm going to pick on Katie because I know Katie. So she might, I know she's going to have some. Katie, what one of those, let me share the screen again, just in case you forgot. What one of those would be a good best practice in your mind?
I would say qualifying each other, having them accept you, but then also that you're qualifying them as a customer. So it's kind of a two-way road there.
Yes. Most salespeople, they're acting more like a child that wants the allowance from mom or dad. Oh, please, can't you just give me some money? There's this like, they're the child and they're trying to get the purse strings. But let's face it, when somebody buys from you, there's money involved. And we need to live on that. So, but we got to be careful that we don't come off as the child begging for the business, begging for the appointments, begging to, a lot of salespeople will beg to quote. Like, well, just let me get you a proposal, but that's backwards. We don't even know what they want yet. It's wasting people's time. And it doesn't make you look like you really know what you're doing in the buyer's mind. It sounds like you just want to sell them something. You don't really care if it helps them or not. Let's just sell them something. Okay. So these are things that can establish, again, that equal business posture. All right. We're getting a few things. I just happen to see that. So yes, it makes people more open to listening and considering your offer. I think it would be extremely helpful to review the proposal together. Yeah, if we don't value our proposals enough to review it with them, like we're just going to send it over the internet, why would they value it? They just assume that it must not be much in there because you're just willing to schlep it off, in another Netherland, and they can do whatever they want with it and not even call you back. So, yep, good one. And I was going to say your first name, but I have a feeling I would probably butcher it. So, but thank you. That was very good. Minnie, I could say Minnie. There we go.
That's why I put both, just in case.
Very good. All right, let's keep moving. We have a few more.
And Dan, just a brief moment. It looks like we had some hands raised, whether
Oh.
it was or maybe Shelly. Shelly, did you have something that you
Yeah, I did have my hand raised. So, but I was fine with so qualifying people, we do that up front in our discovery calls. I mean, once we're on the phone with them, we're very transparent with our pricing because we want them to see the value and how much it's going to cost them monthly before we even establish them as a client. Because if they can't afford what we're offering, then it doesn't make sense to even move forward with it.
Yeah, and that's good. Some people's idea of what things cost can be vastly different. If you're 10,000 a month and they thought 1,000 a month was a lot, and you want to do this in a nurturing way, they don't qualify, right? That's just too big of a gap. I mean, you can't lose $8,000 a month just because they have a low budget. Now, what can happen though, and this, if we're not careful, is sometimes, I'm going to get into this in just a little bit, sometimes they don't realize how much it's costing them to stay put. And if they knew that, they would beg, borrow, and steal to pay the 10,000. It's not always the case, but I'm going to get into that a little bit, Shelly, and I'll point that out to you. It's another way to establish equal business posture too. So, but very good. Sometimes you're just too far apart, and it's just doesn't make sense for either one of us, them being the prospect and me being the sales professional, to continue kicking this can down the road. We're just too far apart.
Right. And then at that point too, you can always refer them to somebody who might be able to help them and still add value to the relationship that you have.
Exactly. And so you're still helping them, you're facilitating them getting what they need, even though you're not the right one for them. This next part has more to do with meetings. I think we would all agree that having agendas at meetings typically is more effective. But one of the things that, let's just say, for example, that this was a sales meeting. There's a couple things here. I can't tell you how many times, when I coach people, particularly in the beginning, they go, well, I thought we were getting together to go over this. And then when we got together, they went over this. And I didn't even know that. It's like, okay, no victims here. But what they didn't do was establish the purpose. There wasn't clear purpose. Why are we getting together? I have other people say, I thought I was getting together with them to talk about my product or service, but they just wanted to network with me. I don't want to network, well, that, you can say that, but did you really establish the purpose? And I think sometimes we just kind of hope it's for what we want as opposed to really knowing what it's about. Another one is time. People, I find this consistently, but if a salesperson is calling on a prospect, they always allow way more time than if a salesperson's calling on them. It's usually about double. So we got to make sure we know how much time. I'll ask people, how much time did you put in your calendar? An hour. Well, how much did they give you? 20 minutes. Well, we could have had that discussion before you got there, but we didn't. So that's another thing. Now, this is a key point here is, what do they want to cover during the time rather than what you want to cover? First of all, most salespeople don't have an agenda at all. They just show up and throw up and wing it. But then there's the others that are really large and in charge, and they're sending over the calendar invite. And these are the 5 things we're going over, whether you like it or not. We're going to do this, and I'm in charge, and and everybody's like, ugh, So what we want to do instead is establish, what does the buyer, the prospect, want to accomplish? Imagine how much more you would learn before you go in and do your. Now, again, this is part of a process. It just may not be part of some of your processes. Is what do they want to get out of the meeting? And then we match it up to what we want to get out of the meeting. But if I had, 3 things that I wanted to accomplish as a sales professional, and I asked Shelly what she wants to accomplish, and she names 2 of them, why is it more powerful that she said 2 of the 3 rather than me saying what they were going to be? Why is that more powerful? Why is that more
Instead
powerful?
of going through all of your list, you can focus on the 2 things that I mentioned.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
so
learned,
you know what to target.
Right. And then I learned something about her.
Mm-hmm.
When I just come in with my agenda, I'm not learning anything. She's learning everything as the prospect. Okay, but the problem is the prospect has the problem, not me. Now, my sales may not be where I want them to be, but that's my problem. But she's the one that has the problem that she's hoping I can solve. So doesn't it just make sense that she would have more to do with the agenda rather than me. Okay. Let's keep going. And then I can match it up. And let's say there was one thing that she didn't say. I can introduce it and say, hey, Shelly, can I suggest one other thing that sometimes people want to know at the first meeting? And then she's going to say, sure. See, that was a contract, an offer, an acceptance. I say, you know, sometimes they want to know, like, specifically where they're going to get their ROI the first, you know, get their ROI the quickest, return on investment. Any interest or not? Oh, that'd be great. But see how she got to buy in. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I'd love that. And then the last one is outcome. Now, what this is not that they're necessarily going to buy after that meeting, but that they at any point can say, look, this just isn't going to happen. Because when it's not going to happen, and I'm the only one that doesn't know, there's confusion. And the way it manifests itself is they don't return my calls. They're never around. They're always in a meeting, blah, blah, blah. So if they know they can say no, and I can say no, equal business posture. You know, if I can say, Shelly, as much as I'd like to help you on this, I mean, our minimum to work with somebody, don't take this the wrong way, is $5,000. And, you know, and you guys are struggling at 1,000 right now. What if I introduced you to somebody else that maybe that's more where they are instead of trying to make this happen? See, I'm still staying with her, but I'm not wasting her time or my time. I'm still trying to facilitate her getting what she can for $1,000 budget. Okay. All right, let's keep moving here. I think I already talked about this, but you know, if the salesperson feels like they can't walk away, you do not have equal business posture. So for those of you that have salespeople, if we aren't empowering them to be able to walk away, they are always going to be subservient. I mean, can you imagine like a marriage that's that way? You know, one can walk away, the other one can't. Yuck. I mean, that sounds horrible. Now, again, I don't think we should be threatening one another walking away, but if one can and one can't, that sounds like, you know, a good way to really abuse something, you know? And so that's what happens with salespeople too. They get abused because the prospect can always walk away. The salesperson has to just stay in there. You can't take no for an answer, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's just doing a disservice to your salespeople. All right, now this is the one, Shelly, I was gonna talk to you a little bit about. And the reason we're establishing equal business posture is a vendor, the only part that they talk about is price, which is the dollar sign. A trusted advisor talks about time and resources and price into doing something different. You know, if you guys think about anytime you do anything different, that's change. Change is hard for most of us. 80% of us hate it. So there needs to be a reason for someone to change. Even when there's a reason for people to change, they don't always change, right? So if we're not talking about those things and just hoping they don't know, that's not a good way to go about it. By us bringing up the time and resources first, as the sales professional, the power actually shifts to us. It's not this thing out there that can come back to haunt us at the 11th hour. We're just already talking about it. And so, unfortunately, a lot of prospects go to price too quickly. Hey, you know, this sounds kind of interesting, but before we get too far here, what's this thing cost anyway? Well, first of all, that's inappropriate because I don't even know what you want or need yet. And when we give them a price, when they don't know what they want or need yet, we've done them a disservice. Because sometimes it's more costly to stay put, but nobody ever talks about it. And so that goes undiagnosed. And these people have been hurting more than they need to be hurting because nobody challenged them. Now, this could be in any relationship. There's a cost to staying put, and there's a cost to leaving, and there's a cost to doing something different. It's always a cost. There's no like one just costs and the others, there's always a cost. So by bringing that up, you're establishing equal business stature. So an example of that could mean, you know, well, we could spend $1 and not solve your problem, or we could spend $1.50 and solve your problem. Which was the better deal, right? Well, spending $1 and not solving your problem, I think we can all argue that wasn't a good deal. That was a wasted dollar. Or we could spend more and solve the problem. There's always a cost of doing nothing. And as a trusted advisor, equal business stature, you are willing to go there with them. There's always, remember, we can always walk away. And sometimes it's not that there's anything that it's not that you're too expensive, or it's not that whatever, it's just that they don't qualify. I mean, why am I listening to people that don't qualify? I need to go to people who qualify. Now, if they're all telling me this, that's another thing, but none of the people that are giving you the negative feedback are those people that just didn't qualify. And so rather than taking it personally, just saying, I just don't think we're the right fit for the goals you have here. I think they're good goals. I just don't think we're the right resource for that equal business stature. Now, if they say, okay, well, then I move and walk on. I think, well, I don't know about that. So what am I missing? Now they're trying to sell you on why you should stay in it. Okay. Again, equal business posture. And then the other thing that sometimes people who want to help, supporting someone and enabling someone can be sometimes a slippery slope. I want to support the person, but if I want them to change more than they want to change, then I could become an enabler. So it's their problem. The reason you're there is because they have a problem. And if I'm doing all the laboring on your problem and you haven't paid me yet, that's a problem. So instead, I like to use the word co-labor. So it might sound like, Luis, you're saying, well, hey, I want you to come in here and look at all this stuff and get me a quote and do all this stuff. And it's like, time out. I'm happy to do some of those things, but I'm going to need you to also provide some information for me to do those things. Well, I don't have time for that. Well, then rather than me doing it anyway, I might say, well, maybe this isn't a priority right now. Well, can't you just go out? I can, but if you're not willing to spend time on it, if you were me, why would you spend time on it? Well, maybe you need the sale. No, I don't need the sale. I'd like it.
Dan.
I don't need it. Luis?
You sound like a few prospects were calling. I don't know if you have practice, but they're absolutely.
I've been
sometimes you got to know.
Not kidding. But no, I mean that's how they act, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to just put the fish back in the water and see what else you can catch, and then just let it go.
I mean, if you're too busy to advocate on your own problem, you probably aren't really going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't mind if I waste my time on it because something good might come of it, but I don't want to waste my time on it. So that gets back to equal. If you're not willing to advocate for yourself in this scenario, I'm not going to be able to help you. Well, why not? Because I don't have enough information. Can't you just get me a quote? No, I can't just, I can, but it doesn't help anything because I don't know what you need. Now I'm giving you the orange concentrate version here, but I mean, most of you are going, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Why do we do this? I don't know, but a lot of people do. So, but if we establish equal business posture, you're working on your problem, not just me, particularly before you buy from me. Now, once you buy from me, yeah, you're paying me. That's equal. But in the beginning, think about how much time we waste with people that never buy. Okay, so that's another example. Now, in all fairness, now we're going to talk about, that was their pain. Now we're going to talk about budget. So the other thing we need to share with them is sometimes money is the easiest thing for them to come up with. It's the time and resources that's even more costly. So you want to share that with them. As much as I'd like to, you write me a check and everything just disappears, that's not the way it works. You write me a check and then I need to get more of your people involved and we need to work on this together. That takes time and money that you're paying me and resources. Can we talk about those and make sure you're willing to commit all three? See how it's more equal? Also, what's a meaningful, oops, didn't mean to do that. What's a meaningful ROI, return on investment? Let's do this real quick. Well, I don't think we're gonna do this, but usually when I do this, we just do it in the chat, and if you had a problem and you spent $100, but you had to provide time and resources, what would be the increment that you would expect in return? And the numbers are anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10 to 2.5. Everybody's ROI is different, and you need to know what's meaningful to them before you get into this, because you may feel like you did a bang up job because you gave them 2.5 times back. They were expecting 5. Again, walk away if not realistic. You know enough to know when it's not realistic. And then again, co-laboring, not just me giving prices, me getting an idea of what they're willing to put towards this in the way of a budget. And then the last one in terms of qualification is the decision making. I think we could all agree who and when is usually the most important. You need to know who can say yes, and you need to know when they need it, but they see that one coming too quickly and they tend to lie here. Like they say they need it 6 months before they really need it to have a buffer in there, or they say they can make the decision because they don't want you to know that they can't. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that can happen there. So but we still need to know that. But what I found is when you talk about how they're going to make a decision, they tend to just give you some of this. And it might sound like this. Well, normally we'd have to go through purchasing, we'd have to do all this, but because we're on the fast track, we're able to make that decision within our department. Okay, well, when you say fast track, what do you mean? Like, we got to have this in by May 1st or heads are rolling. Oh, okay. So who's the we that you're talking about? Well, it's me and so and so and so on. See, they don't even think about it because they're just thinking about how they make the decision. They don't see it as me asking specifically for those things. And this is another thing, can we both say yes? Who's ever gone to a car dealership and you can buy a car if you want, and they have to keep going back talking to the sales manager. Well, so that's doing the salesperson a disservice. They can't even say yes. And at some point you're just like, excuse me, you're getting in the way. Let's just bring the person out, the Oz out behind the curtain so we can meet this dude that you keep going back and talking to. I'm not doing this anymore. If you're getting in the way, just bring him out. Let's talk about it. Well, sometimes we do that with our products and services. We don't empower our salespeople. They can't walk away and they can't even say yes. Well, a true decision maker is going to go, excuse me, who can? You're wasting my time, right? All right. And then again, we're working together on this. I may need to bring in some people, that are going to fulfill some things. They need to bring in their people. It's not just me and their 10 people trying to knock this out. We're going to all work this, or vice versa, my 10 people and one person who can't even say yes. We're going to work on it together. It's going to be equal. Okay, anybody have any thoughts on the decision part? Just things that get kind of wonky, or, where you've seen some of that stuff manifest itself on the decision. I think personally, that's where most deals get hung up. It's in the decision process. Wayne?
I think one of the challenges and setbacks is when you think you know who the decision maker team consists of, and then you realize that that's not really the decision making team. So it's almost like a bait and switch. So, and what's happening is that sometimes through the process that you were led along a certain path and you thought you were dealing with the people who make the decisions, and ultimately that they don't, or they don't make the decision at the price point that you were fully informed that they were engaged in. So that's something that I specifically have dealt with and deal with.
Yep. So when we start asking the tougher questions about how things get made, those other people tend to manifest themselves in the conversation. Or they'll say, well, if it's under $5,000, I can make the decision. But if it's, 5,001 and more, then I have to run it up to blah, blah, blah. Well, that's good to know. And I've seen people get really creative with that. They said, well, what if we did I know your thing's $14,000, but what if you invoiced me 3 times for $4,700, 2 months apart? I would attempt to make that work as opposed to it going up getting kicked around for another 3 months, still getting shot down. So there's just things that we don't know unless we ask. All right, so at the end of the day, there's back to equal. Have we earned the right to give a proposal? Okay, but here's the other side of that. Have they earned the right to receive it? So if we don't treat our proposals like a golden egg, they're really not that special. And that's why you sometimes find yourself on revision H, I, J, K, is because you sent the proposal prematurely and we're continuing to tweak it because we didn't do it, we sent it prematurely and we didn't have enough information. So everybody's just spending a lot more time. But again, it's equal. I'm not trying to be arrogant here, but have they earned the right to see your proposal? Have they qualified? And that's frankly what these last three things were: paying, budget, decision. Do you have enough information from them that you would feel like this warrants you spending not only a minute on it, but some of you have to spend hours on your proposals. All right, so that's all I got for today. Who has a question or a comment or a concern or wants to call BS? So totally fine. Questions, comments?
And when you're going into your initial conversation, how do you potentially approach knowing whether somebody's a decision maker? Do you always, ask how the process of decision making is done, or do you have another way or a tactic that you go about it? Because that's always knowing, like, hey, we need to be speaking with decision makers.
Yeah. So first of all, when you, especially when you get referrals, you don't always know, right? And so now just because someone refers to me doesn't mean that I have to talk to them, but I would want to, just to foster that. But sometimes we have some people out there doing more harm than good. They think they're helping us and they're just wasting our time because they know somebody who can say no, but they can't say yes. But at the end of the day, personally, I attempt to call at the top. Now, when you get into enterprise accounts, that's a little trickier, but we tend to work with, small and medium-sized companies. So like I'd be looking for at least a VP or higher. I prefer the CEO, president, chairman. Some larger companies you can get away with a VP, but I rarely find directors can say yes. Director levels and below.
And when you are speaking with maybe a director or an account executive or somebody that's, a little bit lower on the podium or the totem pole, I should say, do you have a certain way you approach getting to that decision maker and maybe having a warm introduction somehow?
Yeah, I think, we all kind of sense when we're not in the midst of the decision maker, but we don't know for sure. So I may sometimes dip down into that how a little earlier than normal. If I sense I'm not dealing with the decision maker, I might say, hey, let's pretend, you like what we have and you guys want to move forward. How does that decision get made? So I just go there. And then they might say, well, I'd have to get my boss involved. And I'm like, yep, I kind of suspected that, but at least now they've at least mentioned there's a boss, and they might mention someone else in another department. And then that allows me to know, okay, I'm not dealing with the decision maker. Now, then I can make an educated decision on what I want to do next. But normally I would say, well, based on that, can I share a best practice with you? What's that? Sooner more than later, we need to get the three of us in a room. I don't know if they're going to like that. Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not going to be able to give you a quote. Our process is we can't give a quote if we don't have the person who can say yes there. And my concern would be that I'd be wasting your time.
And then could you use like the parenting, the nurturing, like if we can't do that, maybe together, let us try to do it this way, like using that nurturing type of persona.
Yes, we could.
And trying to find a way to meet each other at the same, roadway.
Yep. Or it could be, Carol, can I make another suggestion? But sometimes when you just share the best practice, they just go, that makes sense. Let me see if I can get them involved. But then sometimes they don't. But I always ask for what I want, not what I think I can get. Because sometimes I get in my own way. So just ask for what you want. And if they say no, then we negotiate a different way of doing it. Because they have their process and we have our process, right? Their process is they make this person run in circles and do handstands and just jump and give it to the decision maker only to say, well, where's this? And then they have to come back to me, well, where's this? And how many times we have to learn this lesson? So we ask for what we want, we negotiate if it's different than that. Yep, good questions. Anybody else? Well, how about we do this? How about put what you got out of today in the chat, just as a lesson learned, like what, if anything, sparked that you feel like you maybe need to establish, one of the hacks that you need to establish better equal business posture. And then the other part of that is typically on something like this, most of you got what you needed today, you're good, don't need any further discussions, but occasionally there's someone that says, I would like a follow-up call, not because you're going to buy anything, you just want to talk a little bit more, maybe didn't feel comfortable bringing it up in front of 15 people. So when you do your lesson learned, if you just put, like if you want a contact, just put call, CALL, and leave your number, and then, but the rest of you're perfectly fine. Just, you got what you needed and it's all good. Just trying to make it easy for people who might want to have a question outside of this answered.
And if for some odd reason you're not comfortable putting it in chat, completely fine. There's a few ways that you can get in touch with Dan. One of the simplest is just going to LinkedIn, checking out his profile and messaging him there. I know on the presentation that I slide with everyone in chat, I put ways that you can get in touch with him through phone, email, or LinkedIn directly if you just want to take the next step and have a just good conversation with someone who's a seasoned pro.